Welcome to the Automation Unplugged podcast, the podcast for technology professionals, featuring leading industry personalities. I'm your host, Ron Callis.
Let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Automation Unplugged, the Marketing Expert Series. I'm your host, Catherine Wheeler, and today's topic is the power of storytelling in AV marketing and why most content fails to connect with customers. I thought I'd start today with a quote, as I like to do. And this one is from Donald Miller from StoryBrand. His quote is, "No one will ever buy from you because you have the best content. They buy from you because they trust you and believe you understand their needs." And with that in mind, I'd like to invite today's guest, Deby Rubi, a professional writer at One Firefly who helps AV businesses tell their stories in a way that actually connects with the customers. Welcome, Deby.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, thanks for joining us today.
I'm very excited to be here and get to represent our very lovely content team here at One Firefly.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I think you know that I am. But before we dive into everything today, could you, give yourself a little introduction, tell the people who you are?
Sure. So as I said, I am the content lead here at One Firefly. That means I manage our wonderful team of writers and editors that are in charge of creating hundreds of content pieces each month for our clients. I joined One Firefly about 10 years ago. So I can vouch for how wonderful we are here. I started at the time we still had kind of a hybrid digital marketer role that was both an account manager and a writer, until we shifted that about 4 or 5 years ago. And then I shifted to my love, which is writing, and got to spend all my time on that, which I'm very happy about. Initially had started before I came here to sports writing background, more journalism background. So to your point that we'll talk about here a lot more, and it's the same there. You want to tell a story rather than just report on what happened. And I think a lot of that I bring over here of just wanting to make sure that people are able to connect with what you're talking about. So I'm very excited to be here and get to geek out with you about writing and content and things we both love, I think.
Yeah, writing is like my favorite thing. Next to sales. Let's be fair.
Yeah, of course.
But since it's your first time on the show, I thought, and we were going to talk about writing, we could do something that was a little fun for me too. I thought we could play a little game.
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to start. So we'll start it off a little simple. And this game is called In or Out. So all you need to do is say if something is in or out. And what I have done is prepared a short list of, common writing tropes or, controversies or whatever. Can get really, really heated in this discussion. But I know you have opinions, as I do. Let's say, are something in or out? So first things first, the Oxford comma, in or out?
I am an in on this one. I know that's controversial, but
It is
the
not
more
controversial.
clarity, the better. So I like that in there.
Yeah, no, it's the right answer. It's not controversial. It's it. That's shame on people who don't use an Oxford comma. Shame.
It was very weird to me when that first controversy came out because I didn't realize there could have been any room for controversy or other options there. But
There's
people
not.
can have their own opinions, but I think they're wrong.
All right. This one is pretty controversial. And this one I think we're going to be on differing sides of just because of our age range. 2 spaces after a period.
I am out on that one.
Oh, I'm in. I can't stop it.
I did briefly own a typewriter, so I understand, the origin of that one to get going. But I think these days it's just unnecessary.
I realize that it's unnecessary, but it's not actually from a typewriter. Every class that we took when I was a child and computers, I had a computer since I was 4, but we had to take keyboarding classes in elementary, middle, and high school. And in every class, it was 2 spaces after a period. And you had to do it so much that now I can't not do it.
I get it. Now it just feels wrong when you don't do it.
All right. Okay. This one a little less controversial, maybe. I don't know. Starting sentences with and or but.
I am an in on that one.
Oh, I'm an out.
Oh, man.
I don't care for it. All right.
Gotta break up the tempo a little bit every once in a while.
But not with it. Oh, whatever. You know what? I'm not going to argue. My worry is I'm gonna die on the hill at the 2 sentences after a period. I'm not going to worry about and or but. This one though, this one really grinds my gears. This one is exclamation points in marketing copy.
I'm trying not to straddle the fence too much on things, so I'm gonna say in.
I'm going to say out.
Okay.
Just because I find that people overuse it.
It's
I
easy
don't
to
need
abuse. Yeah.
agreement. Yeah. Like if it's all caps and it's sale, no, I just can't. Like everybody calm down. Like,
Yeah, I'll give you that one. I think if we have to err on either side, I'd be out as well because I think it's very easy to go overboard, and then now you're just yelling at people.
all right. This one is going to be controversial. Using AI to write content.
I'd say a no on that one. I think it has uses in the kind of process of writing, but I think when you actually are putting pen to paper, for lack of a better word, I think it's better that it comes from a human and have kind of a soul in it to give it a little more emotion and feeling. I think AI is good at creating sentences, but not necessarily conveying a message particularly well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm an out, and just because I find the way that it can write, again, crafting a sentence, sometimes it's a very obvious and B way too wordy. It just
Yeah.
doesn't feel. You're right. Soulful may be a good way to put it. All right, one sentence paragraphs in or out.
I'll say in on that one.
Me too. I love a one sentence paragraph. Sometimes you just gotta get it out there.
Just gotta leave them hanging there with a little break. Like I said, it's good to break things up every once in a while.
Yeah, get a little bit of rhythm. Get something
Yeah.
going. Okay, this one is the bane of my existence. Clickbait headlines. Like, you won't believe what this home theater can do.
That is a no for me.
It's a no for me too. Nobody's clicking on that. We're all over it. We've seen it enough.
Yeah, I think we're over it. I think there might be a weird turnaround back to it because AI, speaking of, doesn't do a lot of that, so it kind of makes you stand out a little. But I think it's the wrong overcorrection to do.
I would agree with you. Okay, and final one, and this one is God, I've said this a bunch already, but this one may be my favorite, is ending a sentence with a preposition.
I'm gonna say in.
In.
Yeah.
I get that it was the old school way to do it, but talking evolves as language evolves, as, we evolve as a people. And I think this is where we are now. Ending a sentence with a preposition is fine. Well, that was fun. Okay. Thanks for indulging me in a little game today, Debbie. I know we had some controversies right off the beginning of the show. I hope we haven't offended anyone greatly, all the anti-Oxford comma people out there. But I think it's a good way to kind of, explore the theory that writing rules aren't always black and white, and neither is content creation. So what you and your team do is a huge challenge, trying to, architect everything to be for specific businesses and in their voice and, deliver their messaging. So I think it's a good way to start out.
Yeah, and I think a quick thing I'd add to that, I think, is also, I will talk about this later. It also just, to your point, makes you have a personality, a voice. I think if we're all very strict about the way we write, we'll end up writing the same.
Yeah.
And
Nobody wants to
it's
do
blogs, we don't have to be following a strict style guide here. Instead, we want to just make sure we're connecting and being approachable.
100%. And in that kind of vein, I think we should kind of talk a little bit about, go back to the beginning and talk about why storytelling matters in AV marketing. So when you're writing content for our customers, why is it that you guys, focus more on telling a story than talking about, specs or technical things?
I think a big part of marketing is taking people on a journey. And you'll find this in also very technical terms of like the buyer journey and leading them to the purchase. But I think it's very important to connect with people, like you say here, emotionally, where they're at, and then guide them to where you want them to be,
Mhm.
rather than just this is the product. And I think it's also a way to differentiate yourself, right? Like everyone, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the people, especially in this industry, we're selling the same products.
Right.
So what really makes you stand out? If I just give you a spec sheet, they can just look at the spec sheet and decide who to buy it from,
Mhm.
or if they want it or not. But if they really want to sell yourself, your company, you really want to tell a story and connect with people directly.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think, another way that you guys kind of work that into your messaging when you're writing for our customers is kind of building trust. Building that trust with the company that, they know what they're doing, they have experience, expertise, that kind of thing. So, is that the kind of story you guys tell when you're writing?
Yeah, I think we want to tell the story that kind of like we mentioned story brand earlier. You still want to center the reader, the buyer, and what they want, and make sure, because I think you can err in the other direction too of like now we're just talking about ourselves and how great we are, and no one cares. They care of like, why do I care? What's it to me? So it's really
Right.
important to create that story and that framework of this is what we do and this is why you should care. So yeah, we have attention to detail. That's great to hear, but creating a story about it of what that means in your home theater, what that means as far as like ease of control and reliability, and making sure you're painting the whole picture for them and kind of lining that path for them rather than just trying to state facts.
I love that you said that because nothing is more true than as a human being, we're all going, yeah, but what does that mean to me? Oh, you've been in business for 30 years. Why do I care? How does that affect me and what happens? So yeah, you're right. I think being able to relate that to the customer is probably the most important part of those stories.
Yeah, and I think that's something that comes up. Some other training we've done is with the copy hackers training, and that's a big part of it. Of when you're writing copy, as soon as you're finished reading, something you always want to do as part of your editing is to ask, "So what?" If you're the reader, cool, you do this. So what? Why do I care? And you really need to make sure that you're finishing that sentence for them and that thought process for them.
Oh, I love it. That's so smart. All right. Well, I couldn't agree more that storytelling matters in marketing and storytelling matters more in our industry where there's kind of a disconnect sometimes between the end user and what they think we do and what we actually do. So I thank you guys for trying to bridge that gap. And I know it's not always easy. And since it's not always easy, let's talk about some of the ways it goes really off the rails really quick. So what are maybe some of the biggest marketing fails that happen with content out there?
I think number one, and I do think we've gotten better about this, is just writing for a computer.
Hmm.
So keyword stuffing, getting too obsessed with like when you say something, how you say something, even just coming up with key phrases of like, well, this key phrase ranks really well, but it's 5 words. And now you're trying to fit those 5 words randomly in your headline and in your intro paragraph and getting obsessed with that. And then it doesn't remain legible for the reader.
Mhm.
And like we mentioned earlier, the number one thing you need to do anytime you're writing content is to think about the reader. Um, the other one we mentioned is we don't have it here, but I think one that's big, it's to just being generic, which kind of goes to this, like you're focusing too much on the product. You're too high level. And I understand that we have to be a little high level. I don't think the whole point of why our customers do what they do is that it's hard and a layman doesn't understand it or know how to do it. So we don't want to get too in the weeds of the programming and the wiring and stuff like that. But I think you do need to get deep enough to let them understand
Like
what,
the value that the dealer
yeah,
brings.
the value of what you're doing. And make sure you're not too afraid to dig into that. Um, and then yeah, just saying, "Oh, I wrote about lighting control," without having a clear strategy of why you're writing it, what you're writing about. Um, and this is something that we get into with our clients too. Of, and I think it comes from a good place, but they'll often just be like, "Well, I don't have any ideas. You do what you want to do, or you're the expert." Um, but I think it's really getting the clients to understand like you're the expert on you though. So we need as much input as possible from the client to tell us your story and what you are to a customer. When you sell something, maybe you don't write it down so it's hard to visualize, but what are you telling people? How are you convincing them in the showroom to buy something? And I think getting more of that information, getting more of that background, and kind of recreating that same thing digitally is kind of the goal. Like I'm sure when you're selling a demo, when you're demoing something, you're not just reading the specs off the spec sheet. You're showing them how it works. You're showing them what it can do for them. And I think it's just getting in the headspace of doing that as well for any online content you're creating.
I love that. That's such a good point because they do. I mean, all of our customers have a way that they sell, a strategy that's worked well for them, that's made their businesses successful. And translating that story and that messaging to their digital presence as well really helps build that brand. So, but again, you're right. It's such a challenge. Um, because I think people do things without knowing that they're doing them sometimes.
Yeah.
And so getting them to, kind of put it out and put it into words can be really hard.
Yeah, and that's part of why it comes natural, right? Because 'Cause you're not overthinking it. You're not reading a script. Ideally, if you're the salesperson here, I'm sure you don't have a script in front of you when you get on a call. You have to pivot and adapt to who you're talking to, and it's the same idea here.
That's cool. Why do for one piece of content we can talk about blogs because everyone's familiar. Why do blogs fail? What do people do wrong when they're out there writing that kind of content?
Uh, I think a big reason that they won't work is that they're not connecting with someone. They don't have a point of view. And I think this is getting even worse with AI, because I think a lot of fluff's being put online, and one of the big issues with AI, which again will make you stand out if you don't use it, is that it doesn't really say anything. It doesn't want to offend, so it won't pick a side.
Mm.
And I think blog will work best if it has a point of view, if it has a personality. It can't just be like 3 benefits of lighting control. I mean, that's a good intro to your page or to your service page, but if you want to connect, I think you need to go deeper than that.
Mhm.
Why we recommend doing it this way, why this is great for your bathroom, why getting ready in the mornings will be easier with this kind of lighting. Like really connect with them and give them a way to connect with the product that's not just like cool, like it's a little easier to control something. Or um I think the interesting thing is I think sometimes the stuff that's maybe easier to sell or more obvious is harder to write about. Um, but I think you still need to paint that photo for them, that image of how it's gonna work, rather than just listing benefits. But kinda just weave that story together.
No, I think that's a great point. So taking that one step further, um, we talked about ways that things fail. How can we make AV content resonate? How can you make a win?
Um, I think number one, I think it's interesting that you mentioned earlier, I think it was Apple and a couple other companies, beyond just going through the process, they have very specific, like, personas and personalities. And people will always connect to that more than they will the content.
Mm.
So you want to make sure you're not sounding too robotic, you're not sounding too vague. Um, it's always great if we're able to get from clients of what kind of style or tone do you want to have that's really yours. Like some people want to be a little more conversational, some people really want to be more kind of elevated and luxurious. And it's just making sure that you're choosing something that makes sense rather than just sticking to talking points or being overly technical, that people will kind of just glaze over once they don't understand something or it sounds too much like they're reading a book.
Mm.
No one's clicking on a blog and wanting to get a textbook. Uh,
Is that like a common thing too, that people make it too wordy, that it's too much and people are like, TLDR, like, I'm not into that. Like, I
ye-
won't.
yeah, and I think that's getting to know your reader. I think for most of our clients, you want to keep it straightforward. You want to keep short paragraphs, even short content, to be honest. I think it's better to have kind of a lot of bite-sized pieces that have one specific story to tell, one specific feature to talk about, than to go on for 2,000 words about the whole service as a whole. I think the exceptions if you're talking to like an audio file, like you're super into high-end audio or you're doing commercial that gets technical and then they probably do want to get like a how-to or a deep in-depth product review, but you have to be very careful that that's what they want.
Mm.
Um, but I think on a day-to-day content, it's easier to just do kind of bite-sized pieces that connect with them, and have them kind of just be able to get to the point quickly.
It's so funny because that's one of the things that when I talk to our dealers and we're talking about, content calendars and moving forward with what their strategies look like, I have to always constantly say to our customers in a very nice way, but not everything has to be everything to everybody all of the time. Like it can just be one thing. If you try to make it too much or too complicated, it's not going to work because nobody's going to be interested. Is that
Yeah, and
fair?
I think that comes up in story brand training as well of like, and I forgot the exact phrasing for it, but you'd have to have your one reader, one promise, one point per page, right? Like you can't talk about everything at once. You have to be a very specific person in mind that you want to talk to because you will experience people that are at different levels
Hmm.
of knowledge, of interest, stuff like that. That's fine. And that's something you can maybe address if they do reach out for a sales call or a consult. But to lure them in, you kind of want to make sure that you're focused on one of those at a time. Because otherwise, you're just going to confuse people. You're going to maybe turn off. But yeah, be mindful that this is not the one and only blog you're going to write. And
It's not what
especially,
you're ever going to do.
yeah. And if you do plan out your calendar in advance, we do have clients, for example, that will do like 3 point series. And like in the first blog on home theater, we're going to cover this. On the second, we're going to cover this. On the third, we're going to cover this. And you get your peace of mind of it's all gonna get covered. And you can even mention that in the blog if you plan ahead of time, like, "Stay tuned. Next week, we're gonna talk about X."
That's amazing and gives you also an opportunity to link internally, which we know is a very
Yeah.
successful way to boost page authority and domain authority. Okay. I'm not going to go down that hole. I'm gonna do this since we talked about it a couple times, just for anybody in our audience that isn't familiar, since we've said story brand a couple of times today. Story brand is a format of writing where it's based on 7 key parts of every compelling story. So the story brand framework helps you kind of simplify your messaging so that you cut through a lot of noise and can connect with your customers better. And so it's a style or a way of writing that helps you kind of alleviate some of the jargon and the nonsense that is especially prevalent in the AV industry. Would that sum it up, Debbie?
Yes, and I think it's very relevant to our point too, because not to give away Story Brand's whole thing, I definitely recommend seeing the courses and if you can go to a promo. But even with them, something they'll say and an issue that I think we've had with clients in the past that are familiar with it is you don't need to put all 7 things in your content.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your content can focus on one of them, and I think that's where um speaking of like this, say here with the customers, the hero, that's part of the story brand framework too, and leading them and guiding them. But one specific content could just be about you guiding them. One of them could be about the solution. You don't need to throw everything all at once. Um,
I think about it like this, like one can be about pendant lighting. It doesn't have to be about
yeah,
light control holistically, the 7 different types of lighting that you install, the lighting design services that you offer, what your service and support looks like after it's like that's too much. I'm overwhelmed already and I just said it out loud. Like
yeah,
for me to read that much stuff, I wouldn't do it. And I'm a reader.
yeah.
And if the readers are dodging you, you got a problem.
And I think you need to be able also just give some credit to your reader. Like I think they're aware if you're talking about pendant lightings that you probably offer other lighting and that you're gonna be able to help them with other things. So I think
Have other pages and other
yeah.
links, other
And that
ways.
internal linking to your
Yeah.
main lighting solutions page, like
Talk
it's
to
all done
me
properly.
Talk to me a little bit about personality, because this is like and voice. And when we talk about that as like a story kind of feature, like how customers do that. If we have a dealer, let's say that's either a new dealer or changing their business strategy or redefining themselves as they explore like new categories or new service products, how do they find their voice? How does
So for
somebody decide how they want to talk to an audience?
I recommend talking as naturally as you would. So something I definitely would recommend to your point, and this kind of goes back to like you shouldn't write with AI, but it can be useful. Something that can be useful is, and it's something that we've done on our end too, is for clients that aren't sure about that, we'll get on a call with them and we'll talk with them about content or anything in particular, or maybe it's a topic they really care about. And then going back, taking that transcript, taking that video and going to AI and be like, hey, what do you think about this person's tone? And they'll catch things that maybe you wouldn't be able to say of like, oh, they use we a lot. They like to be inclusive. Or they are very direct with their language. Or they use nouns that are very aid focused. So they like to help people. So I think even that might help a client realize like, oh, it seems like you do this and there's something we could do in your content. Because you want to be authentic more than anything.
I love that. Okay. So let's pull on that thread a little bit more and say, speaking of being authentic, you said something earlier that kind of sticks with me, and is that have an opinion or have a point of view. And that can get really tricksy in the world that we live in today. Having an opinion sometimes is not always the best thing to do. So how do we straddle that line where you can be opinionated without being offensive or, you know, downgrading one brand to boost up another? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to make sure that your opinion's based on a specific to our point of like we want to be very specific with our content. So without like hedging too much, like say in my opinion for these types of applications and this type of client, this is the best solution. It's not to say, for example, a common example we give clients is like, do you want a sound bar or do you want a full home theater like surround sound setup? If you say the latter, it doesn't mean like soundbars are terrible and they're the biggest scam in the industry or anything like that. It's just like if you want a dedicated theater that's really gonna be booming, you need your speakers. If you're definitely just have a family room just getting started with AV and you just want to start getting a feel for better sound than your TV can give, yeah, soundbar's amazing. But I think it's framing. If you frame the argument properly, you can say like what you want to say without necessarily having to bring somebody down. Um,
Yeah, because that's
but
never the right option, right? You don't want to ever write hit pieces or
no. We do
well,
not recommend just going out there and saying X brand is terrible, never use them. It's more about framing it of like we use this brand because of.
oh,
Um,
I love it. Okay. Well, I think we've all learned a little something here today. Is there any like last bits or pieces of advice that you can give our customers about how to, like how to think about what they want, the content they want to put out, or how to kind of, I know we talked a little bit about earlier that sometimes they defer a little bit too much to us and say, I don't have any ideas. I need some ideas. Is there anything you could tell them to kind of a way to find ideas or think about what stories they want to tell?
Something that I'll bring up, and this came up too in the other training we talked about with copy hackers, which is more about conversion copy. But I think a lot of it applies to blogs as well. And it goes back to being authentic. I think having your day-to-day conversations, I can recommend like writing down to your point of like in the moment you don't realize it's happening, but what are discussions you have with your clients or even in the office a lot, like with your texts of like, again, you don't have to necessarily put someone down, but that's what's a common complaint you hear from your technicians or from your clients that could be turned around into content of like how to avoid X or how to do it better. Um, I think just taking time during your day to day to see what kind of stories you're encountering that you might not realize are applicable to your marketing, but definitely are because you're the one connecting with your end user on a day to day basis, or maybe not day to day, but more regularly. Like, what questions are they typically asking? What might be something that keeps them from wanting to make the purchase at the beginning? And how can we address those questions specifically? I think will help the most. I mean, to our point, every client's unique and every region that they work in is unique. So you're the one on the ground floor, and I think have the best access to what is needed messaging wise done. And to your point, don't cross the checklist of I need to talk about lighting again. And something else is if you really can't think of anything to write about, maybe we don't need to write about it. We don't have to force it. And I think it's better to follow the better stories, follow the better ideas that you have rather than feeling like I have to talk about this service this month.
Um, do you think it's a good idea for principals or people in marketing to ask the rest of their teams, like the installers, the programmers, the service people, the sales team, what kind of common questions they get and if they have any ideas?
Yeah, definitely. And we have some clients that will even connect us directly of like if we're talking about a specific service that they're not familiar with, we might be, for example, a common example since it's a little more divided that way is like service plans. They have a specific service team, so they might direct us to their service team, like, hey, this is our service lead. If you want to like reach out to him with questions, you can, and we'll kind of, get CC'd in the email and we can talk to them directly. And get to talk to them with like what are people calling in about when they need help, what's a common troubleshooting issue, and then maybe make a blog about that. And that's not only going to connect with clients, but probably going to help them in the long run of like, oh my god, they're not going to call me every time this happens. I could just send them the link. We can have that link handy to help them out. So I think the more you involve your whole team, the better. Everyone has a different point of access to your service and what you do. So definitely, and also just there's no reason to take it on yourself.
Well, and I think to that point though, everyone in the organization interacts with the end user in a different way.
Yeah,
Because some are at the beginning, before the sales cycle happens, some are after, some are during, and the questions and comments and concerns that they get all may vary about, where they're meeting that customer. Is it at the beginning when they're stressed out and, in a new build and building house and everything's, crazy? Or is it at the end when they're super happy and everybody's, in a great place? Or somewhere in the middle? We don't know. But, they're having that interaction at some point. And so they might have a different view or a different opinion about what customers want to hear from you.
yeah, and I think that's important, kind of to where we started. Of these buyers are on a journey, your customers are on a journey, and you also want to hit all of them, right? You don't always want to be pitching to people that have never heard about you or that
Mhm.
never had your service. A lot of our content now with impact content is about reconnecting with your clients. So that's a great opportunity to talk to people within your team that connect with them after the sales process to say, yeah, what do they want to hear? What's gonna make them connect with us and keep them this relationship strong between us? It doesn't have to be an immediate sale, but yeah, if these are common upgrades they ask for, those common questions they have right when they start beginning their process of using the service, that's something that we can create that is gonna connect more than just a sales pitch when they're already like you, they already bought from you, but how can you make that relationship stronger?
Well, and I think too, we see it a lot with a lot of the content we write, be it web pages or, emails or whatever they may be, that your existing customers matter just as much as new customers because they're the most likely to refer you to their friends and family. And they're the most likely to buy from you again. And you might get more deeper wallet share if they knew more about what else you sold outside of what you maybe did for them or anything new that you're adding to your business and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to mention of especially in this industry, so much is that we have had people that have had their newsletters forwarded to a friend, and then they're able to make a sale off that because we already have this, but you guys should be interested in this, and you should reach out to them, and it's such an easy way for them to forward that and connect with someone without it having to be a more complicated process because they get all the information they need right there. And it's just about making sure that the content just makes sense, right? And I think that's kind of at the end of it the simplest way to say it. Don't make content just to make content that makes sense existing as content of people actually want to read this.
Okay, I know we're over time, but I still want to ask this. Do you write like from the idea or do you write from like the end goal? So is it saying, this is what we want the customer to do if they read this, and we're going to write backwards from that? Or do we write forwards from the idea? Or is it kind of a combination of both?
Probably a combination of both. I think for blogs, it's more about the idea and making like content that just, this is something that's come up, connects. If it's more the conversion copy, like in a landing page, something like super SEO focused, it's a little more about the end product of making sure you're guiding them to that call to action at the end. And those are the pages that are a little more condensed, they're a little more straightforward. But from the beginning, you should have the idea of what you want them to do at the very end and make sure that the content's going that way. So again, it could start very high level and then slowly get more strategic to get them to understand the benefits and why they should reach out.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Deby. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share some of your insights with us. I'm sure it's gonna be very interesting for a lot of our customers who don't have a lot of one-on-one interaction with our writing team and would love to hear more about how you guys work. So this was really great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. I know we're a bit of an introverted team, but we do, at least in writing, have a lot to say. So we'd love to get ideas and get to write more fun stuff and get creative, and it's better for everyone involved.
I love it. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you soon.
All right.